Well, let's go live to Toronto Police Headquarters, where officials are providing an update on gun violence in the city and the newly formed tow truck task force.
Detective Operations will be providing an update on gun violence in the city, along with an update on the new tow truck task force. Deputy.
Thank you, Laura. We know that the recent shooting tragedies across Toronto continue to deeply impact our city. I want to assure our communities that addressing gun crime is a top priority for our service, and every effort is being made to prevent shootings and advance our investigations. In addition to prioritizing our response to gun crime, we are implementing a dynamic service-wide approach to our gun violence strategy. We are deploying resources strategically to address these violent crimes, and recent arrests demonstrate that our efforts are yielding results. Among the numerous arrests and seizures of guns this week, on Sunday, our officers in 23 Division responded to an intimate partner violence call involving a suspect with a firearm. Following a high-risk takedown initiated by the Gun and Gang Task Force, 3 people were arrested and 2 handguns were seized, along with 150 rounds of ammunition. A laser sight for a semi-automatic handgun was also seized. In 2024, shooting events have increased by nearly 74% compared to this time in 2023. This figure includes both shootings, which result in the deaths or injuries of people, and firearm discharges where evidence of gunfire, such as bullet holes or casings that are found, but no injuries are reported. When it comes to death and injuries, excluding discharges, 2024 is consistent with the past several years, but shows an increase compared to 2023. In 2023, we saw an unusually low number of shootings. This was an outlier. There have been 24 shooting deaths so far in 2024 compared to 24 in 2022. There were 17 in 2021 and 21 in 2020. Overall, shooting incidences in Toronto have been decreasing since 2019, with gun violence in our communities reaching a 10-year low in 2023. On this screen, these are just a few of the guns we have taken off the streets. This year, Toronto Police have made 494 arrests for firearm offences. We've laid 2,242 charges, and we have seized 363 crime guns. In 2023, we also seized a total of 801 crime guns. Over the coming weeks, we will share more information about our proactive efforts to deploy resources and prevent crime in our affected communities. Now I'd like to turn it over to Staff Superintendent Joe Matthews, who will tell you about our new tow truck task force.
Thank you, Deputy. Our approach to combat gun violence includes data-driven decision-making. When we take a surgical and strategic approach when deploying resources to prevent crime as well as initiating investigations. The intelligence we are gathering is revealing some concerning trends. We have initiated multiple investigations across the city to combat the gun crime. Today I'll be discussing one of them. Over the past 6 months, Toronto and the Greater Toronto Area have seen increased criminal activity surrounding a small segment of tow truck industry. This includes shootings and firearms discharges, arsons, and mischiefs, targeting tow truck companies, their vehicles, and their drivers. Since January 1st, 2024, there have been 26 tow truck-related shootings and discharges, representing approximately 12% of the citywide shooting and discharge total. Towing conflicts in the GTA have historically been about territorial disputes and rivalries. However, it's important to reiterate that this issue involves a very, very small segment of the towing industry. As you can see on this map, incidents have primarily occurred in the city's east end, with a few scattered across other areas of the city. In April and May alone, there have been 9 tow truck arsons, with 7 of these occurring in the east end of Toronto. To combat the violence, our Organized Crime Enforcement Section is leading a tow truck task force to ensure that all information intelligence is being shared across the service. This proactive preventative response also ensures that officers are equipped with the latest updates when engaging with community and businesses. The task force will include members from teams across the service, including intelligence, our centralized shooting response teams, traffic services, divisional investigators, and data analysts. The task force will also be liaising with police services from across the GTA to ensure that we're sharing intelligence appropriately. I'll now turn it back to Deputy Johnson.
Thank you, Joe. To conclude, I want to let the community know that we are increasing our presence and visibility in areas that are most affected by gun violence. We also want those engaging in this violence to know that we are relentlessly pursuing and arresting offenders. We encourage community members to contact the police directly or call Crime Stoppers at 416-222-8477 or 416-222-TIPS. If you have any information that could help us remove these guns and criminals who use them from our streets. We are committed to working with the community to eradicate this issue. We'll now take a few questions.
Could you maybe speak to some of the incidents that have happened in the northwest part of the city lately? There have been quite a few shootings involving young people. I'm thinking about the one at North Albion specifically, and concerns that these were people at bus stops hanging out playing dominoes who were targeted but obviously not involved in any criminal activity. Can you just speak to what you believe is happening in those parts of the city and any relation to some of those shootings?
You know, that's an active investigation. I know there was a press conference held there recently announcing the arrests, and you know, there's some information that is available as a result of that. But you know, the broader question is, why are young people getting involved? You know, in that case, I think 14 or 15 years old. It's terrible. You know, we're looking at why that is. You know, there's a number of things that you know, may be post-pandemic. You know, lack of you know, other resources or avenues for young people to you know, to be engaged in. But also, we know that there are, you know, gang and turf wars out there, and the composition of these gangs are getting younger and younger.
Can you just speak to, we see quite a few handguns, also what would be some assault rifles here. Can you speak to any of the tracing that the various teams have done on where these guns are coming from? It's always a question that we get. It's obviously very concerning when you're able to see them like that.
Yeah, great question. You know, listen, between 85 and 90% of these are coming from south of the border, you know, primarily Ohio, Florida, Texas, and Michigan.
And is there any update as to conversations with the federal government, Border Patrol, as to, you know, this seems to be sort of a continuous cycle. We see these handguns that shouldn't be there. So I'm just wondering what the latest is on what you see as potentially lack of enforcement on that front.
Another good question. Listen, we're working diligently with not only other law enforcement partners, but all levels of government agencies like CBSA, you know, also on the legislative front. And you should know that we're also working with our partners south of the border as well to try to stem the flow of these firearms across our border.
The assault, sorry to take, I know there's other questions, but these assault rifles, like that picture is going to be particularly concerning. Can you speak to any situation where those were seized from? Not that a handgun is any less deadly, but those are the kinds of pictures we usually see south of the border.
Yeah, and listen, there's a lot more. I mean, this is just a snapshot. Where those specifically came from, I don't know, but almost every, you know, press conference we have here announcing a major takedown involving, you know, gang or gun violence, drugs, you see these type of firearms there, and it is problematic because these, you know, any one of those things, you know, kill people.
Deputy, you touched on it earlier, but are you seeing more young people involved this year? Early teens, obviously we saw a 14-year-old arrested, but is that a trend now with younger teenagers?
Yeah, you know, we are, and that's it's troubling. Like, you know, what drives a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid to pick up a firearm and then use it, right? And I can tell you we're working with, again, you know, our partners in law enforcement, but also more importantly, you know, private entities as well as, excuse me, city agencies and youth workers who tell us that, you know, there are an increasing number of youths who are engaging in criminal behavior, right?
What about the TDSP? Are there conversations reignited there to maybe push having officers get back into schools more directly?
So I know that discussion is happening elsewhere in the country and maybe even in the province. We are always looking for opportunities to partner with our schools to make sure that there's a presence and an interaction, but we have to be invited at the table. Regardless of whether or not we're in the schools, we still have partnerships with those schools to make sure that we're delivering programs and assisting where we can in a proactive way.
Since the winter, there have been, it's been touched on, a handful of random shootings. We've had those 2 people shot at the bus stop in the North Albion school area. There were 2 shootings before the chess, or before the big shooting with
Mount Olive.
Player. I mean, what can you tell the public about the random nature of these shootings? Are gangs involved? Is this gang initiation?
Well, you know, those 2 most recent instances that you talk about are still under investigation. We have, arrested and laid charges in those cases, so I don't want to speak to the evidence. But it is troubling. Toronto is still a relatively safe city, but one shooting is too many. And when it's focused on a certain area, we have to ask ourselves, why is it happening there, and also who is involved? Why is it that we're finding young people more and more involved in this? And I think, to what I alluded before, it's a turf warfare, and they're recruiting and engaging kids.
With the arrests that you talked about, arrests, I think over 400 people have been arrested for firearms offenses. Do you have any information on ages? Are you seeing a trend of younger people being arrested for?
I can get that for you. I don't have the specifics on that here.
Is the tow truck violence spilling over to the wider community? So what's going on there? Are people getting harmed as a result of just strictly internal?
It's still, as I think Joe mentioned, this is a small segment of that industry who are out there to do what the public needs them to do in times of accidents and that kind of stuff. It is largely an internal issue right now. It's not the public that's being targeted this, but anytime these acts of violence occur in the public, there's a potential for innocent people to get hurt and hit.
And then just coming back to arrests and seizures, you did address availability earlier this week with respect to vehicles. When you're taking firearms off the street, as your photographs show here, is this a drop in the bucket compared to what's really out there?
Well, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. I don't know. I mean, we were taking a lot of firearms off the street. We were very proactive in a lot of the things that we're doing, but it is problematic when these firearms are coming across the border. Are we making a difference? I think so. But when you see shootings that are up, you see our shooting homicides up, it is problematic.
So this is all reactive, right? Is there anything proactive in what you're announcing today that will give some confidence in people that there will be fewer shootings, killings, et cetera?
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, the whole reason for our tow truck task force to be stood up is to hopefully stem the tide in that. And there are things that we're doing proactively, with youth and with folks involved in gang life as well, to do some preventative, proactive work.
It seems like these are 2 very different issues, though. Gun violence, and even though there are some kind of spilling over into the tow truck line, but I don't want to confuse this. These are 2 very separate issues.
Well, gun violence, no matter what sector is perpetrating it, has a potential to hurt anyone, right? And so while they might be driven by different, for different reasons, it's still, an act of use of a gun in public.
But why tie these 2 questions together? Because it seems like the city tow truck situation is kind of an internal thing, and this gun problem is just taking place.
Well, because thank you for that. Well, because we release our statistics on gun violence, which includes shootings and discharges, and those numbers include the numbers that come from the tow truck dispute. And so we just want to explain why there's a potential increase, or what the increase is as a result of. So while I get what you're asking me, they're separate, but why are we reporting it? Just to explain the numbers.
Deputy, in the picture of the guns, obviously I can't tell, but it looks to me that potentially some of them are modified. Can you just speak to, is there an increase in that? I'm looking at the one in the like in the top left corner, for example, looks a bit strange to my eyes, but I'm just wondering if there's a concern about modified weapons. Is that happening before they come across the border? Is that increased danger to the public? Just wondering if you can speak to that.
So I don't know where these specifically came from, but we do seize a number of firearms that have been modified in different ways, including, a lot of them here you'll see have high-capacity magazines, which, are not allowed in this country. We seize laser sights, like I mentioned earlier. There's a whole bunch of these things that that we are seeing, and it is problematic. But any one of these firearms, whether they're modified or not, is a problem.
We're seeing more gun issues, but gun fatalities are down, if I'm not mistaken. Is that accurate?
No.
I thought you released numbers a few weeks ago, and in the first 6 months of this year, while gun violence is on the rise, gun fatalities are down.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'd have to look at the specific numbers that you've talked about. Yeah, I'd have to look at that to be able to comment properly on it. Sorry.
Just coming back to young people, we even saw an armed robbery on Queen Street West of the business where you guys.
We've been listening to Toronto Police down at headquarters, updating the media and providing an update on gun violence in the city, talking about some of the police's efforts to combat gun violence. There's been 24 shooting deaths so far this year. Shooting incidents have actually been decreasing since 2019. There's been about 494 arrests for firearm offenses and over 240 charges laid so far this year. We're going to have a lot more on those results and updates throughout the morning and afternoon.